we still have not had a national event to protest unemployment in this country. The AFL-CIO hasn't done it. Change to Win hasn't done it. And our little leftist parties couldn't do it anyway, but they haven't even tried as far as I know. I mean, it's amazing. It is amazing. On the other hand, the openness of the American people to criticisms of capitalism have never been as great as they are now. Never. I've been a public speaker all my life since I've been a teenager. I come from a long line. My father, my grandfather did this kind of stuff, not in the United States, but in Europe where they came from. And I can assure you, all my life, I have never had the opportunities to speak both publicly and on radio and television the way I have in the last year and a half. So the notion that the American people are not open to a different way of thinking, that's not true. They are. How to get to that, how to mobilize that, how to organize, those are the problems. Those are real. I respect those. Let's not be turned off by some notion that the American people are not interested or not open. Or not, that's not true. It's just not true. Yes, sir.
Speaking about the different way of thinking, after World War II and before, the tax rates were much higher.
Yes.
So we could have it again just by referring to the right.
Absolutely. Plenty of precedents.
So why did they go down, and what should we do to bring them up?
Well, remember who dropped them catastrophically was Reagan. When Reagan came into power in 1980, he dropped the top rate, the rate of the people with the highest incomes was, I don't know if you're familiar with it, in the 50s and 60s was 90%. If you earned at the top, you paid at the top rate, if you earned over whatever it was in those days, $100,000, $125,000, everything you earned over that, 91 cents out of every dollar went to Uncle Sam. Year after year. And that wasn't changed by Democrats, and it wasn't changed by Republicans either. Until the political life of this society changed. And that happened in the 1970s. That's that key time I keep telling you about. That created Reagan. But let's go back, and I will explain to you, and you'll see it in a moment. Remember this? When the productivity kept going up and the wages went down, and I told you the funny story about how the executives decided it was because they were all geniuses and so they should be paid a lot. Here's something else that was done with the money that the corporations were earning because they didn't have to raise wages. Corporations took that money and they flooded it into the political system of the United States. They began to pay the candidates. They began to give money to the parties. They began to develop this new system, the army of lobbyists, so that every congressman and woman in Washington has a staff of 15 and 400 lobbyists working with him or her to get legislation written. I mean, it's bizarre if you're familiar with this. This all begins in the 1970s to take off. Meanwhile, the working class, because they're working more hours and their whole stressed family and they're freaked out by their debts, what does the American working class do? It withdraws from political action because it's overwhelmed by this situation. There's a wonderful book by a sociology professor at Harvard named Robert Putnam. And the funny title of this book is called Bowling Alone. Bestseller. Read it. In that book, but no leftist at all, Mr. Putnam, he shows how Americans, over the period since the Second World War, starting in the 70s, withdrew from civic. They quit the bowling league, that's where the title comes from. They quit everything. They didn't do anything. They didn't get together with other people. They didn't have social clubs. They didn't have any of it. And they withdrew from politics, from the political club in the neighborhood, all of that. If they held on to anything, they withdrew from their unions. They held on to church, maybe, some Americans. Well, that means, under the pressure of their declining economic situation, they withdrew from politics. At the same time, making the wealth possible for the employer, which the employer threw into politics. It wasn't that the American working class changed its politics. It didn't. It's just that the left-leaning democratic working class political punch was withdrawn from political engagement, and these people fill the vacuum. And that's why we have it possible for a Reagan, 5 years later, to drop the tax on the richest people, and nobody says boo. But let me give you some other examples. Very important. In this country, we have a property tax. Just a little footnote for you all, in case you're not aware of this. We tax property, not income, property. But the only part of the government that taxes property in the United States are local governments, cities and towns. So if you have a house and a piece of land in Ypsi-Doodle, Michigan, then the town of Ypsi-Doodle hits you with a tax on the value of your house and your land. You pay on the value of the property. Whether or not it earns income is irrelevant. You pay on the property. Okay, you with me? So the state governments don't do that, and the federal government does not tax your home, your land, what's called real property. Now the question. Suppose you have a $100,000 house, which paying tax wherever it's located to the town it's located in. You sell the house. Ready? You sell it, and you get $100,000 for your $100,000 house, and you now take the $100,000 and you buy $100,000 worth of stocks and bonds through a broker. What is the property tax of Ypsilanti or any other place, or the federal government? Who taxes the property in the form of stocks and bonds in the United States? Answer, nobody. Do you understand? We tax land, we tax cars, we tax homes, we tax stores. We do not tax in the United States stocks and bonds. Well, friends, who owns the stocks and bonds? 1% of shareholders own 75% of the shares. We exempt from taxes the one form of property in which the richest people hold most of their assets. At this point, I will play the national anthem again. How is this possible? Another example. I got my PhD in economics from a place called Yale University, an awful place, which I attended for an awful number of years. And when I finished and got my degree, I taught at Yale for a while. While I lived, Yale is located in New Haven. That's in itself a wonderful American microcosm. Yale is arguably among the 5 richest universities in the world. It's located in New Haven, which has the following distinction. According to the United States Bureau of the Census, New Haven is the 7th poorest city in the United States. Now let's go over it. In New Haven, which I lived in for 25 years, is a piss-poor city. We have the highest taxes on our house, our car, and our property because we have to pay for all the public services delivered to Yale, which pays no property taxes. It's exempt. Not only does Yale pay no property taxes, but Yale University pays no taxes at all to anybody. Yale earns tens of millions of dollars a year in dividends on shares, no tax. Yale earns huge interest on the bonds that it owns, no tax. Yale owns property, by the way, on Fifth Avenue, getting huge amounts of rent, they don't pay any taxes. It's a tax-exempt institution. It has assets of $27 billion, with a B. Does it need to not pay taxes? Are you kidding? It paying taxes would do absolutely nothing to Yale. They would continue to be the wildly wealthy institution that it has always been. But in our society, we have the poor people of New Haven, 60% black and Hispanic, paying huge property taxes to deliver, you ready? Police services and fire services to Yale, which doesn't pay for them. The poor of New Haven subsidize Yale. This is called Robin Hood in reverse. You steal from the poor to make the rich. What is going on? Harvard is the same, Columbia is, it's all the same. What is this? Or maybe now I'll offend someone.